Now, this is a monotype VGC tournament with VGC 2020 legal rule set, except we just had to pick only one type of Pokemon. And each person had their own unique type, so there weren't any overlaps, and there were a small enough people in the tournament where that was possible. So I have the Ghost type, and now my round 3 opponent, which is Haubs, has the Fire type. So this match already happened, and I already played this out. I'm the Ghost player, but I'm going back and retroactively commentating on it just to provide some insight on my decision making and stuff like that. So when I look on team preview, I see Doug's team, and this team looks very scary to me because it looks very offensive, and it looks like it has a lot of like power put into it. And you know, because I'm mono ghost, Cinderace is really scary because I know Cinderace has Sucker Punch potentially. And also, Incineroar is very scary as well because, again, it's dark. And so... And then, even though Charizard isn't usually have a dark move on it, Charizard's still really scary because it's just very powerful. I am surprised that Doug doesn't have Torkoal or, he doesn't have Torkoal or Ninetales on his team. I was kind of expecting a Mono Fire team to have either Torkoal or Ninetales, but he doesn't actually have either one of them. So, at least that's one thing I don't have to worry about. So, for this game, I think about Trick Room because most of his Pokemon are faster. But I decided to go with the Dragapult Dusclops lead instead, which, I explained this earlier, my Dusclops doesn't actually have Trick Room, but I'm trying to play my Dusclops in this match as if it does have Trick Room. I kind of want to see, what he's going to try and do here, and, how I'm gonna play this out. So... I go Dragapult Dusclops, and he goes Talonflame, and Cinderace, I find out it has Safety Goggles and Life Orb. I don't really feel comfortable Dynamaxing here, just because Cinderace is so powerful, and I feel like there's a good chance, I could just get one-shotted by it here. Also, I have Dusclops here, and I don't actually know in this situation which one my opponent's gonna go for. So I'm going to kind of try and figure that out. And also, remember, at this time I'm still playing Dusclops like it's a Trick Room Dusclops, even though it doesn't have Trick Room. I have to pretend like it does. So, I'm going to Shadow Sneak proc my own Dragapult and use Phantom Force. This way, if he decides to double down on Dragapult, if he sees Dragapult as a threat, he actually won't be able to hit Dragapult with anything because, I'm in Phantom Force, and hopefully it'll be nice to stall an extra turn. And, yeah, if he decides to double in on Dusclops, that'll give me some, important information, I think. So I do have a Trick Room mindset here, but obviously I can't use Dusclops for Trick Room, so I have Mimikyu to use Trick Room. So, he's gonna start with Brave Birding on the Dusclops, which, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting that move from the Talonflame, because I was expecting Talonflame to maybe taunt or Talonflame to maybe Tailwind there, and he did not do either one of those things, and instead he just Brave Bird the Dusclops. Which this means that there's a good chance his Talonflame doesn't have taunt, because if his Talonflame had taunt, I think taunt would be the more optimal strategy there. Of course, it's possible he was worried about Dragapult outspeeding it and him not being able to get the KO on Dusclops, but if I were to Dynamax Dragapult there, I wouldn't want to set up Trick Room anyway, so it wouldn't be advantageous for me to do that. So he ends up doubling into Dusclops, which kind of tells me that my opponent is trying not to get Trick Room set up. That's kind of what he doesn't want to do. Now, I'm going to bring out Mimikyu next because this is actually my Trick Room setter, but I don't necessarily have to commit to the Trick Room yet with Mimikyu. But the problem with that logic is that I'm in Phantom Force, so as soon as I come out from Phantom Force, I'm just going to get hit. I can't avoid it. He didn't max Airstream with Cinderace. If he had Airstream with Cinderace, I could maybe survive another turn. But he didn't Airstream with Cinderace. He used Darkness, so I'm going to go first, and I'll be open for attack. And it's a good chance that Cinderace is just going to kill Dragapult from this range. So I do think that Trick Room actually probably is my only option at this point to win this game, to take this game back. Because I have my slow Chandelure in the back, which is the Power Anklet Chandelure. Now, he withdraws Talonflame, which I wasn't expecting this move at all, but it does make a lot of sense, because he probably figured I was targeting the Phantom Force into into Talonflame because of Libero. You know, he's probably going to use the Dark-type move. So he probably figured it was coming in on Talonflame, and he was right. It was coming in on Talonflame, so that was a good switch in by my opponent. In addition, Mimikyu with -1 attack is not very good either. Like, we don't want to see that. Mimikyu needs that attack power. So, he kind of ignores Mimikyu and just picks off the Dragapult after the Phantom Force, which kind of makes sense. It does limit my options now, so, but yeah. I knew this, so I have to go for Trick Room at this point. So I do that. Now, the problem with this play is that now I have Chandelure, and I realized something. This is a mistake that I made. I realized that I brought Chandelure thinking, okay, Chandelure's going to be great for Flash Fire coverage because, like, he's a mono fire type. But I realized in doing this, I have nothing to actually hit either of these Pokemon with. I can't hit any of them for super effective damage. For Incineroar, I can't even hit Incineroar for neutral damage. My moves are Shadow Ball, Heat Wave, and Energy Ball, and Incineroar resists every single one of those moves. And so there's no way I can actually hit it. And I realized this after I do all this whole Trick Room setup with the sweeper thing, and I'm like, you know what, Shandy might be okay defensively, but they all have Dark-type moves anyway, so not really. And I can't offensively hit them. And I'm like, well, at this point, I pretty much know I lost this game. But I still play it out anyway. In hindsight, I should have maybe just forfeited, but I didn't. Because I'm gonna give away my min speed Shandy right now, because I don't know if, I guess I don't know what his Incineroar is invested in. If his Incineroar has a lot of speed, I might not be giving it away, but, well, yeah, I might not be giving it away yet, so maybe I am not actually giving that away yet, but, my Power Anklet min speed Shandy, but anyway, there's no way that Shandy's going to be able to kill these Pokemon. And the other problem is I don't want to set up Sun, so even if I did hit Cinderace with a fire move, I would be sending up Sun for them, and it's like, I don't want to set up Sun for Incineroar, like, no, we don't want to do that, so. He has Snarl, which is a very interesting move. I don't quite expect that. That's not really the move that I expect from this turn, but he uses Snarl. It still gives me some more information. And I just play rough. I figure it'll kill the Incineroar. Play roughing the Cinderace might not have been a bad move because he was Dark-type. I don't know, I just went for the Incineroar. I figured there was no other way I would be able to kill it. At least maybe the Cinderace I'd be able to kill it if it was like a different type. So, yeah, that was kind of a fail. Shandy is such a glass cannon. It's just, it dies so fast, even in Dynamax, it doesn't even matter. But my mistake was bringing Shandy, and I kind of realized that, at least as my main sweeper. Maybe bringing Shandy wasn't a horrible idea, but as my main sweeper, it was a bad idea. Now, originally when I made, like, my first Mono Ghost team, I had Jellicent on it for, like, water coverage, and then I just didn't really like Jellicent. I didn't find Jellicent hit hard enough for what I wanted it to do, so I didn't actually end up using it on my full team, and at this point I'm kind of thinking, you know, it'd be nice to have Jellicent right now, because I'm running against Mono Fire, but I don't have Jellicent. I'm able to pick up the KO on the Cinderace, but then the Talonflame is just going to probably kill Mimikyu, or at least get very close to killing Mimikyu. Yeah, it's a good thing I didn't set up the Sun, though. So it doesn't quite KO, which, like, is kind of nice. And then we get to see, at least get to see here what their last Pokemon was, and it's the Rotom, and there's, like, no, I'm sorry, yeah, there's no way I can take out these two Pokemon with Mimikyu. So I knew as soon as I had Shandy in the back and I brought it out, I just realized my mistake. I was like, I can't hit these Pokemon for any damage, and so I knew I was going to lose at that point, but, you know, I gave it the old college try, and for sure I want to get more information if I can from this game. There were times when I was like, I thought about using Swords Dance in case if the Cinderace used Sucker Punch or something, but, like, yeah, I decided not to give away the fact that I had Swords Dance, so I didn't do that. So, yeah, I just play rough because why not? I mean, you know, I'm gonna lose anyway, and he already knows I have play rough. I'm not giving away any information from that. So, yeah, this was kind of a bad game. I just really made a mistake by having that Shandy in the back, and In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have used the Shandy like that at all as like a min speed Pokemon. But, you know, hindsight is 2020, and it was an experiment to say the least, and so I wanted to try it. Alright, but so we're gonna go into this game 2 now, and I'm actually kind of shook. I'm not really sure how to adapt to this because the mono fire is just extremely strong offensively. And the problem is I don't have anything on my team that can hit it back super offensively. But I did get some good information from that match. I mean, I learned that the Talonflame probably doesn't have Taunt because he didn't use it. And I learned that the Talonflame, and then the Snarl Incineroar was very interesting because that kind of gave an insight as to, okay, you know, because I thought maybe the Incineroar would have Taunt, but it has Snarl, so I feel like it probably doesn't have Taunt either. Because, you know, let's say it had Darkest Lariat, maybe Flare Blitz, Taunt, and Fake Out. Or, sorry, not Taunt, Snarl and Fake Out. Like, I could see that being his moveset. So, anyway, so this time, I'm trying to think of how I can do this. And how I can make it so that, like, you know, I can actually do well this time. And so some things that I noticed from game 1 is that my opponent seemed to be very, very, very unhappy with my Dusclops out in the field, and they doubled into Dusclops turn 1. So that kind of tells me that, like, if I were to lead with Dragapult, that they were sleeping on the idea of me using Dynamax Dragapult. Like, they didn't even hit Dragapult, and they didn't even try to set up Tailwind, which, like, my other opponents kind of were trying to do to get... Well, one of my other opponents was trying to do to outspeed Dragapult. So I figured, you know, this time I might try the offensive Dragapult and kind of see how that goes. So I'm going to go with Dragapult and Mimikyu as my lead. And just kind of see how that goes because, yeah, if it goes south, I can still use Trick Room as my option. Now, something I didn't know at the time when I was doing this is I didn't know that Cinderace's Cinderace's max move, the Fire Max move, it acts like Mold Breaker, so it actually goes through Disguise, so I didn't know that, so that makes Mimikyu less useful, but I didn't seem to really mind. So, anyway, so this game I brought out Mimikyu and Dusclops, Dhelmise, and, Mimikyu, Dusclops, Dhelmise, and, whatever, you know, Dragapult, Mimikyu, Dusclops, Dhelmise. So my plan here is, like, I think my opponent is probably sleeping on my sleeping on my Dynamax Dragapult option, because the way they just double targeted my, my Trick Room setter kind of makes me feel like they're not going to expect that at this point. So I decided to Dynamax my Dragapult. And the other good thing about this lead is it doesn't have Cinderace on it, which is really nice. Cinderace is a lot more threatening to Dragapult than, let's say, Cinderace is a lot more threatening to Dragapult than Charizard is, even though Charizard is really scary in its own right, just because of how powerful it is, and G-Max Wildfire and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just glad I don't see Cinderace out here right now. So I go with Airstream, and I bring in Dusclops. Now, this is kind of a weird play. The reason why I do this is because I'm going to try the offensive Dragapult, because I think my opponent is sleeping on it right now. And the reason why I switch into Dusclops here is because I think my opponent's not going to want to see Mimikyu out here anymore. I think my opponent, because of the way they acted the last game towards Dusclops, and they know my Mimikyu has Trick Room because I revealed it, that they're not going to want to, they're not going to see Dragapult as the threat. They're going to see the Mimikyu as the threat. So, I imagine them doubling into Dusclops here, and if they double into Dusclops, that's fine, because my Dusclops actually is useless because it doesn't have Trick Room. So I decided to go to Airstream. You know, he attacks me with Brave Bird. I got that prediction wrong. He actually does hit Dragapult with Brave Bird. And so, yeah, so we got the speed up, which is nice to see. And then he just goes for Heat Wave. I get this prediction kind of wrong here, but it doesn't really matter. The situation's still okay for me because I Dynamaxed my Dragapult. And now I'm at +1 speed, which is actually kind of critical here. And the reason why I actually went for Max Airstream instead of another move that might be more powerful is to think about the Charizard using, it's not even for Tailwind, because I didn't really think about Tailwind. I didn't think that my opponent would set up Tailwind against Mimikyu. But it was more just because I was afraid of the Charizard using max Airstream, and then if I was behind in speed, then I would definitely lose. But now the fact that I'm actually at +1 speed is pretty critical, and Talonflame lost the priority. Talonflame lost the priority Tailwind now, so that's also like pretty critical for their team. Nah, so my opponent is Dynamaxing here, and I'm a little bit confused as to why they Dynamaxed Talonflame here. If I were my opponent, I would probably try to Dynamax the Cinderace, because they probably have the Cinderace. I did actually think that he could use Protect with Charizard, but then because I'm now proccing, and I saw that Airstream did about half, the proc Wormwind I think might just kill through Protect anyway. So, yep, some proc Wormwind, even though he protected, it doesn't even matter, because it's still just going to kill anyway. But the main reason why I used Wormwind over Phantasm is because of the attack drop. I wanted to get the attack drop on the Talonflame if he decided to attack with Talonflame. And so, yeah, I don't think he expected me to use Wormwind there, because he Dynamaxed Talonflame, which means that his Talonflame is now at -1, and he's at +1 speed, but I'm also at +1 speed, and my Dragapult is going to outspeed at this point. So it's not really a big deal. Plus, his Talonflame is at -1. Now, I think if I can get off another Wormwind, Talonflame will still not be able to kill me, because I saw kind of how much it did before. So I decided to try and get another Wormwind off. Now, the issue I see here, of course, is that the Cinderace probably has Sucker Punch. And maybe that's why my opponent chose not to Dynamax Cinderace. Maybe it's because they wanted the priority Sucker Punch over the Dynamax. And, I guess I can respect that. I haven't revealed Ally Switch on my Dusclops yet, so I decided to Ally Switch Dusclops. And the reason is because I imagine that Cinderace is going to try Sucker Punching my Dragapult. And they do, so I had to reveal Ally Switch to save Dragapult an extra turn, and I think that this will actually save Dragapult for another turn, because the -1 to the Talonflame is actually going to make it so Max Airstream doesn't even kill Dragapult from this range. And he does go for Max Flare, which I wasn't quite expecting, but he Max Flares actually the Dragapult. He doesn't Max Flare the Dusclops, because I used Ally Switch. He probably was trying to get the Sun up with Max Flare and thought, okay, Sucker Punch is going to KO Dragapult here. The Ally Switch really saved me here, because it was a way for me to be able to save Dragapult for one more turn. And because my opponent didn't use Airstream here, I was really surprised he didn't use Airstream, but because my opponent didn't use Airstream here, I still have the speed advantage, so that's going to be really, really, really important this next game. So I'm already at weakness policy here, so I'm going to be really strong, and he still has to respect Dragapult, even though it just has 16 HP. And because I'm not running, I'm on a Ghost, he can't fake it out. And, Incineroar doesn't get Sucker Punch, so he has to actually just put resources into hitting my Dragapult. So here, I'm gonna just Nightshade, because I can't set up Trick Room. I would set up Trick Room here if I had it, but I don't have it. So I instead just go for Nightshade and Phantom Force. Now, Phantom Force is going to be interesting here, because I really feel like since my opponent is probably going to see Dragapult as a threat, because of, even though it's just 16 HP Dragapult, it's at weakness policy, so it's still doing a lot of damage to their team. They're probably going to try hitting the Dragapult, but because I used Phantom Force, it is not going to work, and they can't do it. So, yeah, so that means it's good. So Dusclops lives another day. I get a Nightshade off, which, again, Nightshade doesn't really, do a lot of damage, but it's a 4-hit KO on most Pokemon, so, it eventually gets to your win condition if you just keep doing it enough. And Dusclops is bulky enough to where it becomes that sometimes. So, anyway, yeah, so I kind of thought about, cheesing out with Ally Switch here, but I don't do it. So he goes for Flare Blitz onto Dusclops. Yeah, and so the problem, there's kind of a problem with this. He used Airstream, so that means that now Dragapult is slower than Talonflame, which means he couldn't hit Dragapult in Phantom Force animation. He can still do it with Incineroar, because Incineroar is still slower at +1 speed. So he does do that. But yeah, using Max Airstream there when I had Phantom Force actually didn't work. Actually worked out in my favor because it allowed my Dragapult to live another turn. Or not live another turn, but live a little bit longer, I would say. So, next up, I'm going to now bring Mimikyu out. I do have Dhelmise as my last Pokemon, but Dhelmise is just, I don't know. The reason why I brought Dhelmise to this game is because I thought I might use Trick Room. And also Dhelmise is the only Pokemon on my entire team that that can actually hit Incineroar because it has Liquidation. All my other Pokemon types are either Ghost, I have Poison, I have Fairy, which is okay, it's neutral, but like, yeah, the only move I have on my entire team to hit Incineroar super effectively is Dhelmise. That's why I brought it to the game. I really considered using Trick Room that game. Or, sorry, this late game, I considered it. You saw me hover over the button. But then I was like, well, I don't really need to do that because Nightshade will kill. And so I can just Nightshade and play rough, and that should just get the knockout here. And that should just get the knockout here. So I didn't get too risky with that one. So I actually win game 2, and I'm feeling pretty good about this because I really didn't see a good way to win that game after game 1 because just the raw offensive power of Pure Fire was too much for me, and I also didn't have any way to offensively hit Incineroar or most of the team, to be quite frankly, but I managed to make it work. So we'll see how game 3 goes. Game 3, I kind of see that, okay, I used the Dynamax Dragapult the last game, and I won the game with Dynamax Dragapult, so I'm thinking in my brain, I'm thinking my opponent is probably going to be ready for Dynamax Dragapult this time. I think before my opponent it didn't seem like my opponent felt ready for Dynamax Dragapult. It seemed like they were thinking more a Trick Room type thing based upon their actions. So, like, for me, I decide, okay, I actually need to go on the Trick Room now because, I brought the Dynamax Dragapult, and they might be trying to counter that this game instead because that's what won me the second game. The Trick Room actually lost me the first game. Now, the thing is, also, I haven't revealed Dhelmise yet. I haven't used Dhelmise yet, so they don't know that my Dhelmise has Liquidation, and they don't know that it's basically my win condition at this point. To actually have a reliable win, I need Dhelmise to be able to use Liquidation, and Liquidation isn't even good enough because it's a mono fire team, so they're probably going to have Sun set up with their max move, so I feel like there's a very good chance that I Liquidation is not even good enough. I think I actually need Max Geyser, so yeah, so that's the only reliable way I can take out Incineroar, and the Dynamax Dragapult without Incineroar did work fine, but it was just kind of I felt like it was more to catch my opponent off guard than it was actually a reliable strategy. I feel like the Trick Room with Dhelmise is going to be more reliable. So, alright, so let's see how this goes. So I'm going to choose my Pokemon based around a Trick Room mode. I feel like that's my best chance of winning this. So, yeah. But again, I also can't make it super obvious to my opponent that I want Trick Room. So I have to kind of have to sneak it in there. Because last game I did that thing and I didn't use Trick Room. So I set it up as if it looked like I might want it, but I didn't actually use it, so. Alright, so now I'm gonna lead with the same leads as last time. And last time when I led these two, I went offensive and Dynamaxed. So I'm thinking if they see these leads, there's a good chance they may think I'm gonna do the same thing again. Because it did win me the game. And also my opponent might be thinking that, they might see that I didn't have anything to hit Incineroar with super effectively. So they may be thinking that, if they can just counter this playstyle, that I don't have anything left. But they don't maybe know that I have Dhelmise with Max Geyser waiting for them if they decide to do that. So I'm just going to go on the hard Trick Room this game and use Dhelmise with Max Geyser to actually be able to kill most of the Pokemon on this team. Alright, so let's get started. I want to see what the leads are here. Alright, so they go actually Cinderace and Talonflame. The Cinderace was really threatening game 1, so I could definitely see why they decided to bring Cinderace back again. And now I have Mimikyu and Dragapult. So in this game, I'm kind of thinking to myself, okay, so there's a lot to digest here. There's just a lot to digest here because we had two very different games. One where I wanted a Trick Room goal and one where I wanted a Tailwind goal. One thing I know for certain is that I need to get Trick Room up because that was the entire purpose of me bringing this team with me. Is I need to get Trick Room up and I need to Dynamax Dhelmise. Those are the two things I know I need to win this game because that was the whole plan. So I have to go for Trick Room. Now, I go for Ally Switch here, which, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, I don't think my opponent is necessarily going to double in on the Dragapult, because, I don't know, I just didn't feel like they were going to. I feel like they might try and counteract the Dynamax Dragapult, but I didn't feel like they were going to double into it. So I thought that the Ally Switch was a safe play here. And, yeah, the G-Max Fireball goes through Disguise, but I think they're probably just instead going to go for Darkness because it's super effective against Dragapult. So I went for the Ally Switch here since I hadn't revealed it before. And this is where it gets interesting. So my opponent actually uses Tailwind because they're expecting me to go for the Dynamax Dragapult, and this is how they counteract it. And it makes complete sense because if Dragapult has speed advantage, you know, I could use Wormwood and just put it at -1, and that'll just make things a lot worse for my opponent. So it makes complete sense why they did this. But I kind of thought about they might prepare for that Dynamax Dragapult, so I did Ally Switch Trick Room instead. And this was actually the most optimal play I could make here because not only I saved Dragapult, right, and I end up with Trick Room. So if I had not Ally Switch, Dragapult would have died. I saved Dragapult and I ended up with Trick Room. And the interesting about here is because he did use Tailwind, Dragapult is the second slowest Pokemon on the field once again. They have Talonflame and they have Cinderace, and because they put up Tailwind, Dragapult's slower than both of them. But the thing is, he did not get rid of his Talonflame's, you know, Gale Wings, so he still has some Gale Wings. The other cool thing about using Trick Room in this scenario is now his Libero makes him a Dark type, so my Play Rough is super effective. I know that's not going to kill because it didn't kill last game, so I knew that wasn't going to kill. And look at how much damage that Play Rough is. I thought I could maybe Swords Dance here, but I said not to because I could take advantage of the fact that the Dark type was Dark type there. That was a crit. That did a lot of damage. It's way more damage than I expected because I haven't even procced my weakness policy. It was just a crit Dragon Dart, so that just did a lot of damage. Alright, so he goes for Dragapult and kills Dragapult with Max Darkness, which is fine for me, actually, because, you know, I actually am fine with him killing Dragapult here because I want to bring out my Trick Room Sweeper. That's the whole purpose of setting up Trick Room, so I have to bring out Dhelmise now. Yeah, I have to bring out Dhelmise now. And I've not used this Pokemon in front of my opponent yet. I brought it one game, but I didn't end up using it because I won before I could bring it out. So they don't know that I'm running Liquidation. And they also don't know this is my only move on the entire team that can hit them for super effective damage, so yeah. The other good thing about this is that Talonflame doesn't have Gale Wings anymore. I needed Talonflame not to have Gale Wings before I brought out Dhelmise, so this way I could just go for the KO. So, since he used Max Darkness again, I can just go for Play Rough to kill it because it's super effective damage, but he withdraws Cinderace. I can kind of see this making sense because he's trying to get that Sucker Punch late game, or maybe because after Trick Room's over, he'll have the ability to use Cinderace, Fast Speed. So he switches into Incineroar, which actually, it's a really good switch in on my opponent's part because, you know, it gets the Intimidate, and both of these Pokemon are physical attackers, and it allows me to, you know, it just kind of weakens my team a lot. And Incineroar is also slow in Trick Room, and Mimikyu is actually slower than Incineroar in Trick Room. So, and there's not a reason for me to hit Incineroar with Dhelmise, but, so I did go for the Max Geyser, and it goes into Talonflame. I figure it's just going to kill at this range, even at -1, and it's still going to kill. yeah, I definitely appreciated the Incineroar switch in. I thought that was a good switch in on my opponent's part, but at the end of the day, I don't. I got my Rain up, so it's going to be hard for him to live. I still got the Play Rough, and Incineroar avoids, which is unfortunate, but to be fair, I've had really good luck with Play Rough this entire tournament so far, so I'm glad that I guess this one, I think I was okay if I missed that one. So, anyway, so now I have Max Geyser, and since I set up Rain, it's going to be super effective in Rain, so even though I'm at -1 attack, it's still going to do a lot of damage. And I go for Shadow Sneak onto the Incineroar because... Shadow Sneak on the Cinderace because I figure the Cinderace is going to try and use Sucker Punch because we don't have speeded... Or the Cinderace doesn't have speed advantage because of Trick Room. I figured the Cinderace is going to go for Sucker Punch. And I didn't actually reveal Shadow Sneak yet on my Mimikyu, I'm pretty sure, so maybe they thought, yeah, this is... I have to kind of do this. But Shadow Sneak still KOs, even though I'm at -1, so they can't use Sucker Punch. And he goes for Darkest Lariat on the Mimikyu to kill it. Which, like, oh, I forgot that the Incineroar saw Tailwind up, so Incineroar was still faster than all my Pokemon because of Tailwind. So, now I have Dusclops left, and my opponent has Charizard. Now, Charizard is not a very good opponent here to... It's not a very good thing for my opponent to have left here, because this is all I can do to basically win the game now is I can Max Geyser Charizard, and Incineroar is going to die to Nightshade. So I can just Nightshade and Max Geyser Charizard. And my opponent is probably kind of scared here, because even though Trick Room is ending, they think, okay, I have Dusclops, so I can just reset Trick Room. The other problem with this is that Rain is going to make Charizard rather weak. It's possible Hurricane Charizard would be a problem. I'm just going to say that, but I don't know if it has Hurricane. So Hurricane Charizard would be a problem if it had it because of the Rain. But Nightshade picks up the knockout on Incineroar, and I know that it doesn't have Protect because it has Assault Vest. So, oh yeah, it has Assault Vest, so of course it doesn't have Taunt. My bad. So anyway, he hits the Charizard with Max Geyser. Trick Room is over. It still does a decent chunk of damage even through Protect. It's not, as much as Dragapult was doing through Protect, but it still does a lot of damage. And so I was checking the Rain turns to make sure, okay, I still have my Rain. Like I said, the one thing that could mess me up is maybe Hurricane Charizard. Hurricane Charizard could maybe mess me up, but even then I am not sure that Charizard would have the ability to be able to kill both of these Pokemon before I was able to use Pain Split and Nightshade. So I go for Liquidation, and that's just going to pick up the kill. Really, Charizard had to kill Dhelmise in order to have a chance at winning, but I think Dusclops could still pick it up anyway. So that was a really tight game. Lots of back and forth.